Hey there, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Sean Macarin. You are in Washington State and are doing some great organizing, activism there on healthcare and other things. Washington State has very great progressive pockets. Also has some Republican pockets. But I wanted to start. You guys have been doing some interesting things there, kind of adopting from Brazil, actually, and Brazilian organizing models. Can you kind of talk about what lessons you've learned?
Yeah, so I'm in would not I'm not in a progressive pocket of Washington State. I'm in Kitsap County, and we're rural, and we're spread out, and we have a rural community. And to help tackle some progressive issues in a rural community, we've looked to the Brazilian landless movement, and their technique is to build from a base up into what's called contentiously co-opt the government. Think Shama Sawant. You build a strong base of progressive supporters. From that base, you develop leaders who go into government, whether elected or hired, and you work closely with them to continue to push for your gains. And we're starting with healthcare right now.
And can you kind of talk about what does that look like in terms of healthcare? How are you guys kind of building bottom up?
Yeah, so we're building bottom up with a campaign right now called Whole Washington. It's a ballot initiative to get healthcare for every Washington citizen. If it's enacted and passed, everyone in Washington could walk into a doctor's office, pay nothing, and get the services they need. It would cover things like vision, medical, dental, which would include reproductive rights issues, mental health issues. Um, uh, for example, if you need to see a therapist, whether for addiction, depression, whatever, with Whole Washington enacted, you could walk in to a therapist's office and pay nothing and get the services you need. And to build that out, and as I outlined earlier, we're recruiting captains who are gathering teams to gather signatures in groups of 500. Right now, we have 26 captains. We're each responsible for 500 signatures. And as we recruit, we find new captains, new volunteers, and it builds and builds and builds. Um, so by the time we're supposed to get our 400,000 signatures by December, the goal is by the time we've accomplished that to get to get the initiative on the ballot, we'll have a huge base of organizers ready to flood the state to get the legislation passed by the people.
And how many
Uh,
signatures do you need?
400,000 by December
Okay.
15, 2022. We only got 10,000, but we've only been going for a month, and we're just now like, pulling up volunteers. Um, and then the idea is to take that and to sit in on government offices for officials who don't support us. For example, in my county, I have a candidate running for the state legislative branch. Her name's Emily Randall. She's not openly supporting Whole Washington, even though she claims she's a healthcare champion. So once we get a critical mass of citizens in our county, we're going to start protesting her office until she supports it. So that's kind of where we're emulating the Brazilian landless movement. We have an initiative to get what we want on the ballot. We're going to build it from the ground up. And as politicians don't support us, we're going to protest their office. To the contra, politicians who do support us, like Rebecca Parson, we're going to hand out her flyers and campaign with her and be visible with her.
Mhm. And can you kind of talk about the actual protest? Because we see a lot of times, there's protests outside politicians' offices, outside corporations' offices. It's usually about a day, and then everybody goes home. What is your plans in your organizing effort to keep the pressure on politicians that are refusing to act?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think that's an issue that a lot of grassroots organizers are trying to tackle right now. And the lesson that we've learned actually from our own American civil rights movement and Civil War movement and anti-slavery movements, as well as the Brazilian landless movement, is that protest has to be with a specific target in mind, and it has to be sustained until that target is met. A modern iteration of it that I think is got some traction is actually what Rebecca Parson is advocating for, sitting in on unoccupied homes until the legislation is passed. So for healthcare, what we would do is sit in on the candidate's office until they endorse it and actually actively campaign for it amongst their colleagues. And the where that actually gets done is in our recruiting. We're focusing on recruiting within our community, people who think similar to us, who need similar things that we need. Like, I'm supporting Whole Washington because I'm in a precarious situation. If I were to ever get a catastrophic injury, if I were to get cancer, I would go bankrupt from the bills. I've already had, for minor injuries, massive medical bills. So I'm advocating for Whole Washington because I need it. And so our goal is to go out into our community in Port Orchard, meet as many people as possible, and really find out what issues are important to them, find out why they can't get activated in the community, what they need to help get activated in the community, and educate them and bring them up to speed. Our premise is that our neighbors aren't dupes. Everyone knows that the system's failing them. People are aware that they need healthcare. People are aware that they need better education systems. People are aware that they want universal childcare. The issue is like the messes just keep flooding at us and coming at us. Like, if it's not school shootings, it's something else. If it's, in the meantime, Joe Biden's wandering around on the front lawn of the White House telling people he's not going to do anything. So like, people are aware of that. So, and we're trying to honor that, and we're trying to go out in our community and really, meet our neighbors, find out what issues are important to them, tell them what issues are important to us, and educate them on, long-term ways to change the political system. And a lot of that is focusing on building solidarity and, educating people that we do have a voice, and if we act in the right ways, that voice will be heard and change will happen.
Now, I'll edit this part out. Can you move forward? Because you're still there. You go. Now, step one is getting on the ballot. Organizers must know that if you got on the ballot, then you have to contest with the God knows how much money is going to come in from special interests against that health, universal health care on the state level. So obviously you got to, get to that point where you're on the ballot, but let's assume you get on the ballot. What is the organizing structure to deal with? You're talking, it could be hundreds of millions of dollars from pharmaceutical companies, private insurance, to stop that from happening.
Yeah, and that's the issue we're all facing right now. We're facing a capitalist machine that has the money and the power and can crush any campaign at its will. We're focusing on community and grassroots. They can pay all the money they want to stop this, but this is a ballot initiative that when it gets on the ballot, the vote will go to the people. And by the time we're going to get the 400 signatures, and by the time we have that, we'll have a database of, hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians who are for the initiative. We'll keep up our efforts to get them out to vote and keep reminding them of why Whole Washington and Medicare for all is very important.
Absolutely. And can you kind of talk about, obviously, the battle for Medicare for all federally is kind of, stuck. You have a president who won't do the bare minimum on healthcare, climate, or other things, just kind of uses excuses. Do you think if you were successful in Washington State, that your organizing model in Washington State could then be adopted in other cities, whether it be, adopting from kind of that bottom-up strategy, more aggressive forms of protest, like you were talking about Rebecca Parsons, who's running for Congress? Obviously, this is all, hypothetical, but if you were able to even get it on the ballot, that's a huge victory, much less achieve it. Can that be adopted?
I think so. And we should be striving for it to be adopted across the country. Like, we need a bigger vision. We need Medicare for all. We need it across the entire country. And the colleagues I'm working with, we're aiming to take this from state to state to state to state. And I think if you focus on individual communities and start in your own community, like I am in Port Orchard, Washington, it's a logical leap to take. But If you start organizing your community, start educating people in your community, over time, the number of people who are involved will build up, build up, and build up, and build up. And so I don't see any reason why it can't be replicated across the country. There are people all over the country who need healthcare. There are people all over the country who are dying from drug overdose deaths, from COVID, from mental health care issues. I mean, our country is facing a massive healthcare crisis, and it spans borders, it spans political parties right now. It spans religion, it spans race. It's a common theme that we can unite our country with.
And I also think it's important because I think most people over the last, let's say, 5, 6 years have been kind of, been organizing mostly around electing candidates. But we've started to see over the last 2 years workers organizing in terms of unions, worker strikes. Now you have tenants unions popping up. And what you're talking about is obviously, within the electoral system, but a direct ballot initiative. So, what does it say to you in terms of, do we need quite a lot more of this kind of direct action organizing outside of just the election cycle?
I think it's the key to a better future that people are asking for and people want. I think the hard part is that the change comes from within. Each individual has to be the agent for the change they want. And so we're focusing on that as a movement. I want healthcare myself. I need it myself. So I'm out there on the streets advocating for it and finding other people who are in a similar situation. Bigger picture, this is where the Brazilian landless movement has proven resiliently effective. They've been able to work within an electoral system, but stay militant, and co-opt the system in a way that allows them to achieve material gains for their people. Their big program has been education. And what they did is they went through and identified communities in Brazil, rural communities in Brazil that needed schools. I'm simplifying it a little bit. But as government officials were unresponsive to the need for schools in rural areas, they basically built the grassroots organizations up to get people into government, to get elected officials in office, who are willing to speak for them and advocate for their position. At the same time, they kept their grassroots organizing going strong. And even if they were friendly with the politician and weren't getting what they want, they would go sit in at their office until they got what they want. So there is a path out there for working within the electoral system and without the electoral system. It requires a lot of work, and it requires grassroots organizing, like the hard stuff, going out and talking to your neighbors and getting to know your neighbors, building a community. That's where it starts.
Mm-hmm. And what do you say to people? Because I've come across this in, just covering stories and meeting people. What do you say to people that say, I love this, but I just can't, I'm like working 2 jobs, or I got kids to raise, I'm a single parent, blah, 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 blah. I'd love to get involved, but I just don't have the time or the energy. It's hard enough just to stay above water. How can those people kind of get involved, even if it might not be, full scale knocking on doors?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we're gearing our entire movement towards that type of person. I mean, I think what you're articulating is something that's missing in a lot of grassroots perspectives. People are making rational decisions given the amount of time they have. I don't even have the time and energy to get out and advocate for what I want to advocate for sometimes. My own colleague, my co-captain on this, he's got health issues. He can't campaign every day. At best, we aimed ourselves just to get an hour of work in on this a week. And we do what we can, and we keep moving it forward. But on a bigger picture, we're really going into our community to meet those people who don't have the time to do this, to then find out why they don't have the time to do it, to then help them build the systems that will give them the time. For example, as we meet more people in our community who are thinking like us, and it turns out we can't turn out enough volunteers to even gather signatures, and the issue is, perhaps they need daycare or they need tutors for their children or something, then we're going to set up co-ops to provide daycare for our members. And then perhaps they'll have the time to come out and campaign. Or if the issue is they just aren't educated on the issues, we'll set up a co-op to educate people and we'll make it free. So that's where we're aiming to. We're recognizing that people don't have time. We're trying to find out why they don't have the time, and we're going to provide the services to give them the time and then fold them into the movement.
Absolutely. And tell people, where could they find out more about what you're doing?
We don't even have a website. Well, the best for Whole Washington right now is to go to wholewashington.org. You can directly get involved with that campaign through that website. I would appreciate a mention, or anyone can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Sean M. My email address is popa@mailbox.org. That stands for the Port Orchard People's Assembly. It's kind of the organization we're doing to get out into the community, meet people, find out what issues are, find out how to get people activated, educate people who want to get activated. That's our local org. Email me, direct message me, reach out to Whole Washington. I can find you that way. And start talking to us about what your issues are. Reach out to me and talk. That's what I really need right now. Just people who are fed up with what's going on and who want it to change.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. Let's keep in touch on this. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.